Hey, shalom, shalom, shalom. When it's off, so by giving no praise to Yahweh, Bashem, Yahushua, Bashem, Kodash. Double honors to the Apostle Great Millstone, and honors to you brothers doing the work of the Most High in truth and in sincerity. Yahweh is the real name of whom the Lord ignorantly calls God, Jehovah, or Yahweh. His real name is Yahweh. His son's true name is Yahweh Shai. And when we pray Yahweh, Bashem, Yahushua, but meaning in, Her meaning then Sham, meaning names, Yahweh in the name of Yahweh Shai. It's a quick one. Which the elder brother had posted this on his WhatsApp status. So I went and found the full clip. Right now, I'm sure, would you call it, he wouldn't mind me playing it, but not gonna bother taking the risk. This is from the channel Michael Knowles. It's titled Michael Knowles Debates Abortion on the Whatever podcast. Right, and would you call it? This is a cutout from a much larger clip, I believe, or whatever have you. But you can start from around 8 minutes and 24 seconds in, right? And yeah, man. I mean, this one here, I don't know what the hell this is. This is here, the one on the right with the white top. But this is whole voice is hella deep. But this whole panel is what do you call it? Just a whole panel of bimbos, and it's always a reminder about why hey, sometimes the Lord the Lord won't let you deal with a chick, and that's because they bug the hell out, man. Right? There's one basic Becky, would you call it? Here on the right, the one that you see there, ain't she is what she is. If you're into Becky, might pop. It is what it is, right? But then the talking points is that of a demon, right? And that is just a reminder of actually in this world, we're just dealing with a bunch of demons, man. Right? That's what the scriptures, for instance, say: "You shall have trouble in the flesh." Then of Eve, it says, "Then she that is mine enemy," right? And then you've got Sirach, the 25th chapter, which has, and then also the 26th chapter as well, which speaks on the nature, right, of these broads, right? Let me just get what King Solomon said real quick. Right, it says Ecclesiastes 7, 25 says, "And I applied mine heart to know and to search and to seek out wisdom and the reason of things, and to know the wickedness of folly, even of foolishness and madness," right? "And I find more bitter than death the woman, right, whose heart is snares and nets, and her hands as bands. Whoso pleases the Most High shall escape from her, but the sinner shall be taken by her." Right, which is why sometimes you'll be seeing some just straight up grimy ass, bug out ass demon, right? With a guy, and then the guys is equally demonic, right? Behold, this have I found, saith the preacher, counting one by one to find out the account, which yet my soul seeketh, but I find not. One man among 1,000 have I found, but a woman among all those have I not found. Right, so that's just covering the point real quick. But one of the things as well that I found very interesting when I watched this is the way that he cut her. Right, so in fact, what I'm gonna do, I'll show the transcript instead. Right, so I mean, he just straight up cuts her, man. It's most because she's trying to say yes, rooted in racism, and he's just there like how basically most Jake babies, right, in New York City are killed than born, right? And once again repeats the statement: the most dangerous place for a so-called black person in New York is in his mother's womb. That's very racist, right? So he's basically retorting like, okay, you're talking about babies, this, that, and the other, and then these two whores here are like, oh, can we stop calling these three? I think it was, oh, can we stop calling them babies? Because of and there's a good comment down here somewhere. One second. Here it says, if that makes you uncomfortable, then you know somewhere in your little heart that the whole thing is sick and morally wrong, right? And then this one here is interesting. One says, as an obstinate person, I had to look up this word. It says, stubbornly refusing to change one's opinion or chosen course of action despite attempts to persuade one to do so. It says, when Michael said, is it maybe because you're afraid you'll find compelling evidence that would convince you otherwise? I felt that, right? So I haven't come across that bit, but that's what you find with a lot of these people, that they're not actually willing to change their position on anything just because, well, they're demons, right? Um, but then he goes, yeah, can we basically stop calling them babies? And he says, yeah, what should we call? Right? And then they said fetus, right? And he asked them a simple question, right? I was like, yeah, well, what does the word fetus mean, right? And then it really reminded me of one of the things the apostles speak on a lot, and that is going into the meaning of words, man. Apostles are big on that. And to be fair, I was kind of cut because this whole topic is a topic that I go into a bit, right? But rather Spirit had me go into a bit, but I actually never even knew what that word means, right? I just had a negative reaction to it because I knew basically the sentiment behind it was just straight up wickedness, right? But that's not a good enough excuse, right? We need to know the meaning of our words. So it says the word fetus is a Latin word that means offspring, so it means baby, right? And they just changed the subject. They didn't even deal with that. These broads didn't even deal with that straight up cut, right? Because this is it. When you deal, with logic with these broads, right? That ain't what they're here for, right? And like I said, when you watch and the way especially when you see the short clip, like you can just type in as you see there whatever podcast feeds you see the short version, right? And the way it cuts, you're like, bro, that was a clean cut, right? But and it all came from knowing the meaning of your words. This is Job 39:17. It's because the Most High hath deprived her of wisdom, and neither hath he imparted to her understanding, right? And that's in reference to these women, right? Now, when you look up, people are it's talking about ostrich, but it's a metaphor for these broads, right? But it is an ostrich, right? I think basics is an animal, right, of sorts, right? But it is ultimately a metaphor for these broads because at the end of the day, like the man is supposed to be the head of the household, right? And that's ultimately who the Lord is dealing with. The Lord is dealing with the men, right? And the men will deal with the women, right? But yeah, like I said, that the importance of going into them words. So I've got a few precepts. I'm gonna close it out, right? 2 Timothy 2:15, study to show thyself approved, right? And studying, you go into one goes into their words, studies their words, and goes into different things because ultimately, people are gonna come up to the camp, right? And then ask, oh, but why is your opinion on XYZ this, right? Why is your opinion on XYZ that, right? And we got to be able to give an answer, right? As I'm about to get in another precept. This is a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth, right? So being aware of certain topics such that when someone comes up, we ain't being clowned by some bloody heathen, right? And that's what happens if one doesn't study. Someone will come up, ask questions, right? And then you won't even know the answer to it, man, right? This is first Peter 3:15. But sanctify the Lord power in your hearts, and be ready always to give an answer to every man that asketh you a reason of the hope that is in you, with meekness and fear, right? And that's it, right? Being ready to always give an answer for the hope that is within us, right? And there are certain things that we believe in. What do you call it? There's certain things that are hard to explain without, for instance, going into the Greek, going into the Hebrew, right? Or going into the etymology of certain words, right? And then got Colossians 4 verses 5 and 6 says, walk in wisdom toward them that are without, redeeming the time. Let your speech be always with grace, seasoned with salt, that you may know how ye ought to answer every man. And I looked up this word here where it says with salts, from the Greek G217 halas, right? It speaks about salt, for food, right? Saline, right? And then 3, salt is a symbol of lasting concord, right? Because it protects food from putrefaction, yada yada. And then 4, wisdom and grace exhibited in speech, right? So that was the main point on you basically just like having an understanding of words, and showing the importance of knowing words, right? Because that was just a straight clean cut, man. It was straight into the point. Even like you have these broads saying, oh yeah, don't call me this, I'm XYZ, and you say, okay, cool, what does the word woman mean, right? Basically just showing you that ultimately we have a whole load of people just go around just saying things without actually knowing, without being experts in them, right? Jeremiah 1 and 5, just to reiterate the point, right? The Lord, and also you can get the one, eye for eye, tooth for a tooth, right? When two men, what you call it, basically if a man had a woman with child, see, the Most High considers that life, right? And in fact, I'm just going to look for it here on the other type. I remember growing up, being taught there were three, I forgot what it was, but it was like there were the three R's: respiration, right? This, that, and the other, to define life, right? But you can do the whole scientific definition, but ultimately it's what's the Most High's definition. This is Jeremiah 1 and 5. Before I formed thee in the belly, right, and before thou camest out of the womb, I sanctified thee and ordained thee a prophet unto the nations, right? So basically, the Lord's there saying, look, I made you, right? So it's the Most High that came and put that spirit, right, in the Most High chose, what do you call it? The Most High chose, the vessel for the spirit, right? You look at certain stories, certain accounts. For instance, one that's coming to my mind now of the prophet Samuel, right? The Lord created that whole controversy with his mother Hannah, right? His mother's the other wife, right? Penina, Hannah, Penina, right? The Lord created all of that situation, right, to make Hannah go and basically get to the point where she's begging to the Lord and said, look, man, just please, Baba, give me a son and I'll dedicate him to you. And then the Lord was like, all right, cool, watch this, right? And he sent him the spirit of Samuel, and he chose him to go into the womb of that woman, right? So as soon as that spirit was in there, the Lord was the Lord was happy with it. That was a good thing. But in this world, they try and make it seem like that is not a life, but that is a life according to the Heavenly Father, right? Second Maccabees 7 and 22 also, right? I like this one because it's like, I made you, right? It says, I cannot tell how you came into my womb, for I neither gave you breath nor life, neither was it I that formed the members of every one of you, right? But doubtless the creator of the world, who formed the generation of man and found out the beginning of all things, will also of his own mercy give you breath and life again, as ye now regard not your own selves for his law's sake, right? So this whole chapter's very, 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 very deep. It's a very, very good chapter to go into. But once again, this point here is just showing like, look, man, hey, we ain't the ones that it's rather these women ain't the ones that make man, right? That make children, whatever. It's ultimately the Most High, right? Which is why and you can kind of go continue going on, but certain things like how when it's like I'm just trying to gather my thoughts. Like for example, like when our scripture says, fear not him, right, that kills body and body, right, but basically fear him that can basically kill the spirit, right, which basically that means bring you back fucked up, right? You also got the account, what was it, John 9, right? Why? But the disciples ask, why is this man blind? And the Lord ultimately says, because it's the will of the Most High, right? But the disciples understood that on earth, right, was the place of judgment, right? And I'll just end on that. I believe that's Ecclesiastes 3. Ecclesiastes 3:16, right? And moreover, I saw under the sun the place of judgment, right? That wickedness was there, and the place of righteousness, that iniquity was there, right? And what's the place under the sun? The earth. So the Lord is, the judgment plays out on earth, right? So basically, that means the Lord has basically chosen, what happens. Or also, you friends, I think about that right now, thinking about the story with Yahweh Shai, right, and his cousin John, right? When the two babies got close together, what happened? They started spinning and jumping in the womb, right? They were jumping in the womb because the two spirits understood. The two spirits like, yo, oh man, like, I know this. I can feel it. Hey, same with Jacob and Esau, right? In the womb, and them two spirits didn't like each other, right? And to this day, we don't like each other. And I'll definitely end on this one, right? Ezekiel 35:5, right? It says, because thou hast had a perpetual hatred, right? And really, it goes before that. It goes, back to the garden, right? But there's been a perpetual hatred between us, and even in the womb, it was playing out, right? Such that Rebecca had to go and ask the Lord, like, yo, Lord, but Kasha, like, let me know why, if it be so, why am I thus? Okay. So I'll just finish this off, right? It says, and I shed the blood of the children of Israel, right? Which one of the major ways he does it is by way of this a wicked ass procedure, right? Once again, you read it, right? African American women, minority women in general, yeah, right. And this is him responding, right? The majority of black babies in New York City are being killed, and this is one of the ways he does it, right? He fulfills this precept here, right? It says, and shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword in the time of their calamity, in the time that their iniquity had an end. Right, so as always, Lord, I was edifying. Till next time we say, Shalom.